The phone call that changed everything came at 3 a.m. Sharon Osbourne stared at the documents spread across her kitchen table, her hands trembling as she processed what the financial advisors had just told her. $220 million. A lifetime of rock and roll royalty, decades of sold-out stadiums, and countless nights of chaos. ... And now, the government could take nearly half of it. Tonight, we're diving deep into a story that's rocking the Osbourne family to its core. The Prince of Darkness built an empire that spans generations, but there's a shadow looming over everything Ozzy worked for. Estate taxes, inheritance laws, financial planning nightmares that could cost his family tens of millions of dollars. This isn't just another celebrity money story. This is about legacy, family, and what happens when rock stars don't plan for the inevitable. Let me take you back to where it all began. Birmingham, England, 1948. John Michael Osbourne was born into a world that couldn't have been more different from the mansion he'd eventually call home. His father worked night shifts at a metal factory. His mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. 6 kids crammed into a tiny council house, sharing everything from bedrooms to dreams. Young Ozzy wasn't destined for greatness. At least, not according to anyone who knew him. School was a disaster. He couldn't read properly, couldn't focus. What we might call learning disabilities today were just considered being thick back then. The other kids mocked him. The teachers ignored him and Ozzy. He found his escape in music. There's something almost mythical about how Black Sabbath came together. 4 working-class kids from Birmingham who'd never amount to anything, according to everyone around them. Tony Iommi. On guitar, his fingertips mangled from a factory accident. Geezer Butler on bass, a vegetarian who wrote lyrics about war and darkness. Bill Ward behind the drums, keeping time for what would become the heaviest sound the world had ever heard. And then there was Ozzy, the voice that would define an entire genre. Their first album was recorded in a single day for £600. Studio time was expensive, and they were broke. But when those opening notes of Black Sabbath hit the world in 1970, everything changed. This wasn't the Beatles. This wasn't flower power or peace and love. This was something darker, heavier, more real. The money started flowing almost immediately. Not millions at first, but enough to matter. Enough to move out of Birmingham. Enough to dream bigger dreams. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because while Ozzy was building his fortune, he was also destroying himself. The drugs. The alcohol, the legendary excess that made him famous, also made him financially reckless. Contracts signed while blackout drunk. Managers who took advantage. Deals that seemed good in the moment but would haunt him for decades. Sharon came into the picture in 1979, and everything changed. Not just personally, but financially. She wasn't just his girlfriend, then wife. She became his manager, his business partner, his financial lifeline. Sharon Osbourne transformed Ozzy from a talented mess into a brand. Think about it. The solo career that started with Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. The merchandise empire. The licensing deals that put his face on everything from t-shirts to lunchboxes. And then, in 2002, the moment that changed their lives forever. The Osbournes' reality show turned their family dysfunction into television gold. MTV paid them millions to let cameras into their Beverly Hills mansion. Suddenly, Ozzy wasn't just the Prince of Darkness. He was America's favorite bumbling dad, mumbling his way through daily life while Sharon ran the show. The money poured in like never before. Album sales surged. Tour prices skyrocketed. Brand deals multiplied. By the mid-2000s, the Osbournes were worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but wealth brings problems that most people never imagine. Complex tax structures, multiple properties across different countries, royalty payments that span decades, business partnerships that blur the lines between personal and professional finances. And then there are the kids. 6 children from different relationships, each with their own claims to the Osbourne legacy. Amy, Jack, and Kelly from his marriage with Sharon. Jessica and Louis from his first marriage to Thelma Riley. And Robert adopted along the way. Blended families and massive fortunes don't mix easily. Who gets what? When do they get it? How do you divide a legacy that's part music royalties, part real estate, part brand licensing, and part pure celebrity value? Recent reports suggest the family is facing a financial nightmare that could cost them tens of millions. Here's why estate planning for someone like Ozzy isn't like writing a simple will. When you're dealing with international properties, ongoing royalty streams, and a brand that generates income long after the music stops, the complexity is staggering. The Osbourne assets include their 8-bedroom mansion in Los Angeles' Hancock Park. We're talking about a property worth tens of millions in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the world. Then there's their estate in Buckinghamshire, England. More millions tied up in property that spans 2 different tax jurisdictions. But the real money is in the intellectual property. Decades of Black Sabbath royalties. Solo career earnings that continue generating millions annually. Brand licensing deals that put Ozzy's image on everything from energy drinks to video games. Music publishing rights that could be worth more than all the real estate combined. And here's where it gets scary for the family. Without proper estate planning, inheritance taxes could claim 40% or more of everything. Let's do the math. If the Osbourne's fortune is truly worth $220 million, and if estate taxes kick in at the highest rate, the government could claim nearly $90 million. That's not a tax bill. That's a financial catastrophe. Family law experts are calling it a potential estate nightmare. The complexity of international assets means multiple tax jurisdictions could claim their piece. The UK wants their share of the British assets. The US wants their cut of the American properties and income. California adds another layer of state taxes on top of federal obligations. But the really dangerous part? Blended family dynamics. When you have 6 children from different relationships, estate disputes become almost inevitable. Each child has their own relationship with money, their own expectations, their own legal representation. What seems fair to one might feel like betrayal to another. Sharon, as his wife and business partner, has legal claims to much of the estate. But the children from his first marriage might argue they're entitled to portions of wealth that was built during their father's entire career. Not just the Sharon years. And then there are the ongoing business relationships. Sharon isn't just Ozzy's wife. She's been his manager for decades. How do you separate personal assets from business assets when the same person controls both sides of the equation? Recent sources suggest the family is scrambling to implement emergency estate planning measures. Trust structures that could protect assets from taxation. International holding companies that might shield wealth from multiple jurisdictions. Legal frameworks that attempt to balance family harmony with financial protection. But here's the brutal truth about estate planning. The best strategies require time, years of careful planning, gradual asset transfers, trust funding that happens slowly to avoid tax penalties. When you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, you can't just write a will and hope for the best. The Osbournes may have waited too long. Financial experts estimate that without aggressive estate planning measures implemented years ago, the family could lose between $50 million and $90 million to various tax obligations. Money that won't go to the children, won't fund the grandchildren's educations, won't preserve the legacy that Ozzy spent 5 decades building. Think about what that means for a family that's built their entire identity around excess and luxury. Kelly Osbourne, whose life has played out in the public eye since she was a teenager, Jack Osbourne, who's built his own media career partly on the family name. Amy, who's tried to stay out of the spotlight but still benefits from the family's wealth and connections. Each of them is facing a future where their inheritance might be half of what they expected, where properties might need to be sold to pay tax bills, where the family business empire could be dismantled to satisfy government obligations. But there's another layer to this story that makes it even more personal. Ozzy's health has been declining for years. Parkinson's disease, spinal injuries from decades of stage accidents, the cumulative effects of a lifestyle that pushed every boundary imaginable. The man who once bit the head off a bat is now dealing with tremors, mobility issues, and the reality of his own mortality. That health decline adds urgency to every financial decision. Estate planning strategies that might work over a 10-year timeline need to be compressed into months or years. Tax advantages that require gradual implementation might not be available when time is running out, and Sharon is carrying the weight of all of it. Managing his healthcare, running the business empire, trying to protect the family's financial future while dealing with the emotional reality of watching your partner of 4 decades fade away. The stress of it all isn't just financial. It's personal, emotional, devastating in ways that money can't measure. Recent reports suggest the family is working with top estate planning attorneys, trying to implement last-minute strategies that might save tens of millions in taxes. But experts warn that emergency planning is expensive, risky, and often less effective than strategies that are built over time. There's talk of charitable foundations that could shelter assets while providing tax benefits, international trust structures that might protect wealth from U.S. taxation, business reorganizations that could shift assets between different corporate entities. But each strategy comes with costs, risks, and complications that could create new problems while solving old ones. The charitable foundation route, for example, could protect money from estate taxes but limits how the family can access and use the funds. International trusts might shield assets from U.S. taxes but could trigger penalties and scrutiny from multiple government agencies and business reorganizations. They're complex, expensive, and often take years to implement properly. When you're dealing with a catalog of music rights, ongoing royalty payments, and brand licensing deals that span decades, restructuring becomes a maze of legal and financial complications. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. Every day that passes without proper planning is potentially another $1 million lost to taxes that could have been avoided. The human cost of this financial crisis extends beyond just the Osbourne family. Think about the employees whose jobs depend on the family business, the staff who work at their properties, the vendors and contractors who've built relationships with the Osbourne empire over decades. When massive estates get hit with huge tax bills, the ripple effects touch everyone connected to that wealth. Properties get sold, staff gets laid off, business relationships get severed. What seemed like permanent financial security suddenly becomes uncertain. And there's a larger story here about celebrity wealth and financial planning that affects every Hearning family in America. The tax laws that threaten the Osbourne fortune aren't unique to rock stars. They apply to every family with significant wealth, whether that wealth comes from music, business, real estate, or any other source. The difference is that most wealthy families plan ahead. They work with estate planning attorneys from the moment their wealth starts growing. They implement strategies over years or decades, taking advantage of tax laws that reward long-term planning. The Osbournes, like many celebrities, may have focused more on earning money than preserving it. The rock and roll lifestyle doesn't naturally lend itself to careful financial planning. When you're living in the moment, pushing boundaries, and dealing with the chaos of fame, thinking about estate taxes feels abstract and distant. But the bills always come due eventually. What makes this story particularly tragic is that it was preventable. With proper planning implemented years ago, the family could have protected most of their wealth from estate taxes. Trust structures, charitable planning, and gradual asset transfers could have preserved the majority of Ozzy's fortune for future generations. Instead, they're facing a scenario where the government might claim nearly half of everything he worked for. The lessons here extend far beyond the Osbourne family. Every entrepreneur, entertainer, and high earner needs to understand that wealth preservation is just as important as wealth creation. The strategies that protect fortunes need to be implemented while the earners are healthy, alert, and able to make complex financial decisions. Waiting until health declines or family crises emerge often means waiting too long. But there's still hope for the Osbournes. Even at this late stage, emergency estate planning strategies, while expensive and risky, can still provide significant protection. The family's wealth and resources give them access to the best legal and financial minds in the world. Strategies that aren't available to ordinary families become possible when you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. International planning could still shield significant assets. Charitable strategies might provide both tax benefits and family legacy opportunities. And business restructuring, while complex, could still save tens of millions in taxes if implemented correctly. The key is acting quickly and decisively. Despite the emotional and personal challenges the family is facing, recent reports suggest that's exactly what's happening. Top estate planning firms are reportedly working around the clock to implement protective strategies. International legal experts are being consulted about cross-border tax implications. And family counselors are helping navigate the emotional dynamics that complicate financial planning in blended families. But the outcome is still uncertain. What we're witnessing is a financial drama that plays out in wealthy families across America every year. The difference is that most of those stories happen in private, behind closed doors, away from public scrutiny. The Osbourne story is public, messy, and heartbreaking in ways that remind us that money doesn't solve every problem. In fact, sometimes it creates problems that ordinary families never have to face. The man who taught the world to bark at the moon, who turned rebellion into an art form, who built a fortune by breaking every rule, is now facing the reality that some rules can't be broken. Estate taxes don't care about your legacy. Government agencies don't get starstruck. Tax laws treat rock royalty the same way they treat every other family with significant wealth. In the end, the Osbourne family's financial crisis is a reminder that planning for the future isn't just about money. It's about protecting the people you love, preserving the work you've done, and ensuring that your legacy extends beyond your own lifetime. Whether they'll successfully navigate this financial storm remains to be seen. But their story serves as a powerful warning for every family that's built significant wealth. The time to plan for the future is now. While you still have time to make the right choices, the Prince of Darkness may have conquered stages around the world, but his biggest battle might be the one happening in lawyers' offices and financial planning meetings. Far from the spotlight that made him famous, and the outcome of that battle will determine whether the Osbourne legacy survives intact or gets divided up among tax collectors and government agencies who never cared about the music that built the fortune they're trying to claim. The Osbourne family's fight to protect their fortune is far from over, and the strategies they're implementing could change everything. What do you think about celebrity estate planning? Have you ever considered how inheritance taxes might affect your own family's future? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Luminoir for more deep dives into the hidden stories behind celebrity fortunes. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the financial secrets of the world's biggest stars.